Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Washington County Chamber of Commerce's Black Advisory Business Council. We have a special presentation and presenter for you tonight. The topic is Innovative Workforce Housing Solutions by Jerryck Murrey. And is it Annum? Is that the company name? I should have asked you beforehand. I'm sorry.
No, that's accurate.
All right,
Great.
so of Annum. So briefly, I'll just give a brief bio for him, a brief intro, and then he'll take it away with his presentation for us this evening. So briefly, having experience in the development and financing of a variety of asset types, including LIHTC, mixed-use commercial, and municipal quality of life projects, Jerryck is focusing on reframing the narrative around workforce housing through his startup, Annum. Annum's goal is to create a network of housing positioned to address corporations' human capital needs while creating an on-ramp for employees to experience their piece of the American dream. So if you didn't get all of that, I'm sure he's going to break it down for you and tell us what all of that means. Jerryck, the floor is yours, and you can share your screen if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you all for this opportunity. I deeply appreciate it. And I'll definitely get to the presentation, but just a bit more about my background, kind of unofficially a part of real estate industry since I was about 16 years old. Had a great uncle who was a developer in Silicon Valley and did all kinds of research development and office space with, major clients like Google, Lockheed Martin, Netscape, are just to name a few. And really gave me exposure to the possibility of what, real estate could be, not only financially, but really, truly crafting that landscape. As I, grew and went along my journey, eventually on to college, played basketball at Western Illinois, and then went overseas to play professionally for a brief moment. I got to engage more with real estate. The owner of my team there happened to own Portugal Best Properties. And I kind of interned there while I wasn't playing basketball and really saw, again, on a broad scale, the international game of real estate. And through that process, I just really started to narrow in on housing. Early 2000, housing affordability in general has been a massive issue for quite some time. But really, it's been within this past decade to 15 years that narrative has changed from, we're helping out people that are, once again, these are narratives, not the truth, but, people that are either alcoholics or lazy or something or other, to now student housing, people that are making good money, but just can't find a place to live. So there's now a very unique opportunity, as we see it, to address really the full stack of housing concerns, but really attack it at the workforce housing level, if you will, as it's become very apolitical, if that makes any sense. So we took that idea and said, hey, companies need people need housing. And that's the general premise of our belief, because housing is the fulcrum asset of life, of what we call it, basically the asset that when removed, everything falls apart, right? So rather than housing as a service, we really try to frame it as housing as a benefit. So with that, I'll share my screen and, be a little patient with me, and I'll get my presentation up and running. And there we go. And if you guys could just give me a quick hand raise if you're able to see the screen, that would be great. Awesome. Okay. So as I said it, housing as a benefit. That's basically our goal. What
Jerryck, I don't mean to interrupt you. We're seeing your download folder. We're not seeing the presentation.
Okay.
We're seeing the folder where it said the deck where you had them stored at.
Let's try this. How about that?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, day one computer issues. So as I said, housing as a benefit. and what we're ultimately seeing here is that, today we live in a shared economy. It's nothing new. But this has largely been driven by the fact that people have been looking for, convenience and affordability. And that's due to these downward and upward pressures happening at scale. There's been lots of questioning coming over, higher education and what that means. Obviously people's buying power as inflation rages on and things just get more expensive. It becomes that dollar is going exponentially, I guess shorter than it typically would. Meanwhile, you have all these other costs, education, assets, healthcare, and so on, moving upward, essentially squeezing people in the workforce as we see it. As I alluded to earlier, the market is now looking for convenience and affordability, and examples of that are the Netflix, the WeWork, the Ubers, the Airbnb. Netflix, you don't have to buy one movie, but essentially for the price of one movie a month, you can get all the movies. Uber, we're not taking, as opposed to just looking for one means of transportation, we now make every car able to essentially serve that need. So, this isn't necessarily a new concept, but with technology, we're able to address these in a much more seamless and frictionless way. And, what my group we're starting to see is essentially these corporate perks, are starting to compete with some of these other offerings that technology is providing. Transportation, I just alluded to the Ubers or the Lyft of the world, school loan payment. You have SoFi and other fintech companies looking to address that. Nutrition, obviously, you have now basically food hailing and, subscription food delivery services that are able to provide nutrition basically on call. And, for my generation, I would say millennials and even younger, our Gen Zers, the argument is, hey, these are ways for us to smooth the friction in our life. But ultimately, if we can afford our housing, we can take care of our own transportation. We can take care of our own school loans. We can take care of our own, nutrition and some of these other issues if we have money. So what we're really trying to do is, once again, reposition housing as an asset. Meanwhile, these are old figures, obviously the date there, 2020, but I think it's important because, since then we all know that housing costs have exploded well beyond this. But even back in 2020, early 2020, housing was 34% of, household expenditures. Now, mind you, this chart has Jeff Bezos in it, right? This is everyone in America. This isn't kind of normalized for certain income bands or streams. And as you move down that earning, I guess, scale is the way to say it, that number of housing percentage goes up, 40%, 45%, and even in some cases, as you get into the more sensitive housing areas, lower wage jobs, that's over 50% of their income, household income, easily. Ironically enough, what we've noticed is that businesses are going through a similar squeeze to their employees or the workforce, right? Obviously everyone's heard the supply chain argument. Employee tenure is dropping. That's largely a function of employees looking for opportunity. So they're, essentially going to the highest bidder. Community sentiment, are companies getting too big? Are they, wielding too much power? Cost of goods, millennial workforce, as I alluded to before. So these are also creating, difficulties for managers of companies and corporate leadership to try to juggle this new normal. And ultimately, how we see it again is that, the benefit models were made for a fundamentally different time. The picture on the left is, the kind of benefit model works great for. You have the working head of household, the other spouse is staying home, baking or doing whatever, and you have your 2.5 kids. Nobody's living that way. That wasn't even my reality as a child. And I would imagine it's not many people's reality today. So updating the benefits to actually provide value where it's needed is another kind of value proposition that we offer. And if you haven't heard it before, basically it's a paradigm shift. We're seeing it happen at scale in all different industries and sectors. And I feel a large part of that is simply driven from the fact that, everyone knows that there's a problem, and no one really knows exactly where it is. And we're not claiming that Annum knows what all the solutions are, but we feel we're best positioned to answer one of those key critical points, which is housing. So with us, prime locations and, ideal rent structures to support the workforce. What does that mean? Cheap rent. We have several models, but our ideal model, as we framed it, rents are 30% below market, and you can see the benefits there. We're in some of the best locations and looking to build in some of the best locations to attract strong workforce and basically give them that start, that on-ramp, as I said before. And it's not just the low-cost housing. Work from home is a trend that's not going anywhere. And anyone feel free to jump in and ask questions. I don't want to, just steam through this, but, we are, putting the best connectivity in our buildings. We're supporting with business services that align with our corporate residents. We have business centers and basically commercial grade printers, fax machines, breakout areas for work, not the cubbies or desks of yesteryear, if you will, but more lounge, cafe-like spaces that are convenient and easy for people to work in. We promote community, and we have a resident app, all designed to work with the local businesses and service providers to provide them access to essentially a captive audience at below market rates to allow them to engage, in getting, new customers while providing a better quality of life for our residents. And this ultimately comes back to the framework or the vision that we have is that work-life balance is fundamentally over. If you've ever sent an email while being in bed or rolled up out of bed first thing in the morning and looked at your phone and you're sending messages, you have no work-life balance. It's really about work-life integration. And what we're trying to do is integrate that in a seamless way so you're not creating that internal conflict of always being behind that many of us, I'm sure, have grown accustomed to. So just kind of a general breakdown of benefits. Again, all benefits aren't equal. The beauty about real estate is that there are tremendous tax advantages from owning it or controlling the asset. And it happens to be a benefit that you will use probably more than any other offering that a business could provide. And ultimately, we believe that, housing with Annum could effectively support other benefits that an employer would choose to, deploy to their workforce. And this is our core model, or our prime model that we like to use. And, essentially we allow corporations to buy into, a housing project, so they're able to gain fractional ownership. Those fees that they pay are used to gain that ownership, are used to pay down, the carry costs of the asset and really, pay down debt. And we can get more into the technical components of that if anyone's interested. Annum handles all the management and the associated, operations with the property on their behalf. The rents paid by the employee base, once again, handle those additional carrying costs, property tax, insurance, maintenance, repairs, our management fee So it's not another line item for the business. And ultimately, all of those things that I just mentioned become write-offs for the corporate partners. After 5 to 7 years, the corporation can choose to exit, at which point we would buy their interest back at the price they paid, plus any change in the market. So if the market rose 10%, they would have 10% on top of their purchase. And then we would look to redeploy that out to the market. Otherwise, 5, 6 years or 7 years go by and the corporation's happy, does not want to sell, it's theirs. They're not required to sell. There's no re-engagement fee or anything like that. They own that interest in that project. The other additional models that we have, just talking with a variety of different corporate types, we have lease to own models that allow businesses to, gain basically control of the asset, but pay down over time. You have your kind of standard blanket lease. We really like to partner that up with other corporations that have bought in or maybe even bought more than what they needed, because it allows us to reduce that rent cost even more for their workforce. And we're even having discussions around market placement, where essentially a business can buy in, have our software, and be able to see the available units on the market with partners, i.e. developers, landlords, investors, where we've pre-negotiated rates on their behalf, and they can place place residents, i.e. their employees, into those units at a below market cost because of the buying power that Annum has leveraged. So those are general our models and our approaches. And I'm seeing a note here, so I'll take a look. Oh, well, so what I said, I can actually share, we actually have a project in Portland that we plan to break ground let me stop sharing real quick.
And Jerryck, we do have a question.
Yeah.
John has his hand raised.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Hey Jerryck, how are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have a couple questions. First of all, I think that old picture from the classroom, I think that was my third grade teacher. Could you get me the information on that one picture?
I'll do some research on that right now.
Yeah, please. And then I think everybody on this call, and I know you know this very well, the cost of housing is skyrocketing, and my sense in talking to people like you is that it may not be coming down. This may be the new normal. It's not like there's this blip where, okay, we'll figure out a supply chain, all that. Can you give at least like a range of like these models? It seems like with all the tax benefits you outlined in that one photo and all that, do you want to hazard guess like this brings down the effective cost of housing per unit by 10 to 15%? I mean, or is that just, are there too many variables to really answer that crisply?
No, so that's a great question. In my previous iterations of this pitch deck, frankly, I actually had an example of a project that we had in LA. LA's pricing tends to be 30 to 40% higher than pretty much anywhere else in the country, except New York City and maybe some parts of Miami, frankly. And I think it sometimes signaled the wrong message because people were like, whoa, 400,000 per unit, and I was like, well, that's in LA. The value of that unit's probably closer to 800,000, but I'll digress. What we try to do is when we work with developers, investors, or even if we take the developer approach ourselves, we are selling our units, at cost to the businesses. So it is well below the market value of when they deliver. And, our goal, once again, our return comes through the management contract. And we're even willing to put in capital to bring down that cost even further, probably another 10 or 15%. So, stepping back and doing kind of high level math, assuming $200,000 to deliver a unit. And sorry about that, my children. One second.
Welcome to the new normal.
No, I know. Uh, I'm sorry about that. It is what it is. But essentially, we're able to take, the land cost, the contractor's fees, all SDC fees, and what have the cost it takes to deliver it, and sell that in fractional units to our corporate partners, right? So they're not paying the market value. They're paying the delivery cost of it. And we're even willing, so let's say $10 million to deliver a project. We're even willing to put in up to 1.5 million of that. So effectively allowing them to buy in at 85 cents on the dollar.
And even that's a discount, you're saying?
Exactly. What we want to do is lower the barrier of entry for corporations, but ultimately, once again, our return comes from the management fees. Once
The life of kids, man.
Total real life scenarios, right?
Yeah.
So, side note, my wife is in New York for investor meetings with her business. So this is the reality. Again, I apologize.
Oh, no need to apologize, Dad. Do what you got to do, man.
Yeah. The point being is that we lower the barrier of entry for corporations, so they always have a margin of safety, right? We realize that real estate isn't their business. Even businesses that have real estate departments, largely real estate isn't their business. It becomes kind of like a necessary evil that they have to deal with. When you think of McDonald's, probably an extreme example, but something like a timber company, they have to manage their real estate, right? But ultimately, they're like, hey, we're here to provide lumber. We're not necessarily trying to get into trading assets and structuring deals and things of that nature. Harry and David is another good example that has lots of real estate holdings, given their agricultural focus. But they don't necessarily, they're not real estate industry from the transactional deal flow standpoint. And what we want to do is support those businesses because, oddly enough, though they're not in that industry, they still need a lot of human capital to make that business run. And housing is becoming a critical inflection point on their ability to attract and retain talent. Hopefully that answered your question, John, with all the breaks and ups and downs, but I apologize again.
And we have a question from Brad.
So, Jerryck, I had a question on like who your target market is. I'm assuming it's like large, maybe Fortune 500 companies or of that size. As we're in the property management game of single family, we're small, but we get calls regularly from like the Intels and that type of stuff when they're moving somebody into the area and they're looking for a house. And I was just wondering, is this market that you're trying to tap, is that the Intel would own a building like this or a share of a building like this and have X amount of units, so they could say to this person that's moving in for a new job, hey, we've got a spot for you? Is that where your niche is, per se?
Yeah, definitely. And once again, a great question, Brad. I appreciate that. I think in these initial innings, that definitely is, our focus. Just given, they have the capital to do so, we're able to really prove the model. But our goal is to really work down, some of those additional models that I kind of outlined are, attempts to work down from the Fortune 500s to, the larger private companies, to hopefully, in the next, 5 to 6 years, we can get down to the mom and pop, that's working with a dry cleaning business and has 6 or 7 employees and will never have a need for 50 or 60 units, but 2 could be very helpful to help them support their kind of, their hiring path, if you will, and to that point, it's very kind of corporate, focused in the sense that some of the projects that we're working on here in Southern Oregon, that's going to be a different demographic, different need from, our project that we have going on in the Rose Quarter, for instance. Definitely different pay ranges. So we're really trying to engage with the corporations, understand where they're having their biggest pain point, either difficult to hire roles, or maybe, hey, we understand that, this analyst role or this line worker role is just highly transient, and we need to be able to support that in a way where we have some more, predictability. So right now, yes, definitely kind of in the Fortune 500 space, but this isn't designed to be simply a Fortune 500 program.
Jerryck, do you have the PowerPoint presentation that shows your project in the Rose Quarter?
Yes, I do. Bear with
Show us
me.
the pretty pictures.
Yeah, I will do that. So there goes the share screen. Oh, sorry, this is just the way. Here we go. So, and everyone can see that? Okay, great. So yeah, this was, essentially our deck for Portland, and some general data that we were able to pull. This is probably about 4 to 5 months old. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was, the renter versus homeowner split. That's, pretty much unhealthy, right? I mean, you want to have higher ownership, in your community. The median home price, extremely high, especially when it's compared to the median income, and once again, this is your guys' market. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you guys don't know. But this is a render of the project analog here or in the Rose Quarter. Now, actually, we're partnering with Ethos Development, and they plan to break ground on that in June. And here's actually probably the best, kind of map of the layout. So analog, as you can see, is kind of that red box right there. We're located close to a lot of employment centers with great access, obviously to the Pearl District and the eastern side of Portland. We do understand that there hasn't been as much residential development in this area, but this was a great opportunity to kind of be in the thick of, kind of the corporate landscape, and, really bring our product to fruition. And these are some of the renders, work areas, lounge space, outdoor balconies, terraces, and this is pretty much all kind of 1 bedroom and a den, 1 bedroom and efficiency units. And there's 134 units at this location. And right now, frankly, we actually just did a deal with, our real estate investment trust on the land, thereby bringing the cost of the project overall down to our corporate partners. So initially, this project budget was looking over 25 million, right? After selling the land and basically Annum being on the hook for paying that land lease, we can now sell the improvements, which still carry all the depreciation deductions and what have you, to our corporate clients at basically half of the cost of the project. Not to get in once again into real estate finance, but a delivered project, the land is worth more. So we kind of, looked out into the future and said, once we deliver, the land will be worth X, and was able to structure a deal to make that happen.
I have a question, Jerryck.
Yeah.
So when you have these big projects like this one here with about 134 units, how
Yep.
many corporate partners do you bring into each individual project? Does it just vary depending on need of the corporations around in the local area, or do you have like a set number? You want one big company or 3, 4, 5 or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing where ideally I would love to have a mix. So 134 units, if we could have, 15 businesses in there or more, that's great. That resembles more market rate housing. It's more of a healthy mix. Or even if we only have 10 businesses, let's say, and the rest are market rate, out to the open market because, we didn't sell those units. It just gives us an opportunity, quite frankly, to engage with people that more than likely have jobs that aren't in our ecosystem to, extend our brand. That's all to say, if there was one company that was willing to take all 134, we would be willing to have that conversation, but we would definitely urge them to say, hey, maybe you need 50 or 60 units, and then let's, look for another project, to create that mix. But we're open based on the scenario.
And your corporate clients on your projects, is that priority one first before you say these haven't sold and we open up to the general market? Or
Yeah, so if this project's going to have roughly an 18-month plus delivery timeline, while we're pre-selling and we're getting towards CO, and we see that, hey, we haven't been able to pre-sell all of these, we're okay with that. We still are going to engage the broader corporate community, but ultimately, we want to be able to provide affordably priced housing. The benefit, what happens is that any units that aren't sold, those other corporate partners are still in the ownership structure, so they would receive a return. We've even on those market rate units, right? And because their return is based on different investment criteria than a fee-based developer or a market-based developer, we can actually provide a lower rent while still providing a fair return to our corporate partners. Furthermore, we've talked to other corporate partners that said, hey, I need 20 units, but I'm interested in buying 30 because, it's just easier for us to control the whole thing. And we say, great, we can lease out those additional 10 to other businesses that, as I said, dry cleaners, so on and so forth, that may not have the capital or the financial basis to come in and buy, but we can engage them and say, hey, you're basically now what we call our sponsor co model. You're now supporting the broader ecosystem in which you do business. So very similar during the pandemic. I believe it was like Papa John's started buying, giving gift cards to other pizza joints or other businesses within their market, and they're a big corporate, to just show some good faith. I would say that this is that like 10x. And it allows the corporate ownership not only to, get a real return, but also, once again, support affordable housing within their community and putting their money where their mouth is in an easy way.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. And, we essentially ran through this. So this was, pretty simple, but, we are truly looking at building a network, so I'm traveling pretty much every weekend all over the place, and building relationships and leaning on new relationships, my own relationships, to get leads on projects and opportunities, because as this is jumping out and probably beyond the context of this call, but my belief is as we start to approach a critical mass, we can start to normalize pricing for things. So it will be less, market driven and more, potentially regionally driven, because then it becomes a risk threshold where we have the relationships with corporations and we can say, hey, within the Pacific Northwest, generally your cost is going to be, $250,000 per unit. And yes, in Portland, that may be a little more. In I don't know, Bellevue, Washington, maybe a little less, more than likely in Medford, a lot less. We're able to kind of normalize and smooth it out as we engage with, Brad mentioned Intel, they're an international company. Ideally, if they had a need in, Portland or Seattle or Austin, we would want to be there to support that need as well and be able to give them kind of a normalized pricing structure.
And Brad has a question.
Yeah, shoot.
So I had a question about Portland particularly. They have their inclusionary zoning, which is the X amount of your units have to be below certain income thresholds. How do you handle that when you're dealing with a corporate buyer? Because I can't imagine a Nike or a Kaiser or something like that is going to be wanting to try and play, or would be able to place an employee that is basically at a considered a poverty level. If they're employed at a corporate America, that would be a weird crossroads. And I just wondered how you guys are handling that portion of the development.
Yeah. So we haven't run into any pushback on that yet. It's not to say it won't happen, but from my experience, it seems like it's simply been, they're trying to reach basically a rent threshold, if you will. And given the fact that our units are all, per annum standard 30% under market, we kind of reach that in general. If as we go down the line and engaging more with planning, and they take the approach that, hey, we want, true low income, personnel within these units, we're more than happy to address that. That's what it had to get approved for. So in order to get through, if you will. So that's nothing out of the norm. I just don't think that their legislation doesn't envision a model like Annum. Because it's kind of like, hey, we're going to force you to provide things at, this price point. And Annum is saying our whole building is going to be at that price point or below. So if it starts becoming about a resident that has a W-2 that actually fits that, we're more than happy to support that as well. And that's definitely something I'll make a note of to bring up in these exercises.
Actually,
sure.
That's a great question, Jerryck, to talk to folks of the city, because they really did in approving that legislation that changed the code. I think it's for 20 units and above. It's sort of a one size fits all. And I think if they listen to your story and well, okay, that's another way of addressing the challenge. That's one of my frustrations with the IZ, is that what we call it, Brad? That yep. It's so inflexible. And so someone comes up with a creative solution like yours. I would want the city to be open to that. But anyway.
Yeah, again, from my perspective, the project, in order for us to receive our permits, we have to adhere to these. I think the issue becomes they're looking at more of a rent price, piece, as opposed to an occupant. Now, once again, we will comply with, inclusionary zoning. And maybe if it's like, hey, we're only selling 80% of the units, so be it, right? Our goal is to basically have a strong brand that supports workforce housing that can ultimately be a reflection of our corporate partners, because we realize that that's great if Annum does it, but the credit really has to go to the corporations, to, truly create that triple bottom line. They're being socially conscious, through affordable housing. It's a great perk for recruiting, and it actually makes financial sense.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? And I don't see anything in the chat.
I got one more, if I may.
Yep, I'm ready.
Jerryck, do you, I'm just curious if you have any leads. Obviously, there's a lot of corporate demand for housing. There's the CEO.
Okay,
just
John
want-
Southgate, I'm just going to jump in and say that is the true CEO. We're talking about the child executive officer, right? That's awesome.
Yes.
Sorry.
There you go. Jerryck, do you have leads in Washington County?
At this, I'm sorry. At this point in time, no. You know, we've been very kind of infrastructure focused at the time. And one of the beauties of the opportunity is that, you know, we know the project works, you know, kind of regardless, if you will. But the goal is to have Annum, you know, take over and through the life cycle of this project, push to sell this to, you know, create opportunities for corporations within Washington County.
Now, I have a question. Now, have you found there are other business competitors to your business model right now? I mean, because this is my first time hearing about this.
So I haven't, you know, I haven't really seen, you know, it's not to say I'm the first. I think that, so how I've kind of taken it is like, you know, technology and innovation basically democratizes the experience of the few to the many. You know, so could ride in the back of Miss Daisy, or you could be in, you know, the back of a lift, right? Facebook can build a campus for their employees. Google can do that. You know, the majority of corporations, even if they have the financial wherewithal, they don't have money falling from the sky to just say, hey, this is something we can do, and essentially grow another arm in order to like manage it. Real estate's sticky, real estate's, you know, messy. It's very, you know, hands-on. And our approach is taking more or less the what Amazon did with AWS by saying, hey, you know, you can have your servers and racks, you know, you have your IT department, but that's probably not what you're really good at. What you're, you know, the IT department is supporting these other initiatives. If you give it to us, we can do it better than you because that's all we're going to be focused on is doing, you know. So obviously the idea of company towns in the past comes out, which is an abuse of this, I think, this kind of concept where, you know, a company almost has their employees as like, you know, a captive audience, if you will, and just uses that to, you know, take advantage. You know, we're really saying, hey, we're a third party. You know, we can work on your behalf, but there's an arm's length relationship between you and your employees. And better yet, we can create a mix that's indicative of the market and allow a better resident experience. So that all being said, you know, truthfully and humbly, you know, I don't think it's, you know, something that's, you know, rocket science per se, but it's just a different approach with a serious problem. And I haven't seen anything that's really addressing it, you know, this way.
I think it's an interesting concept too, because it could help with the massive exodus of the workforce. You know, for in the 90s and early 2000s, all the tech companies were offering all these weird perks of, you know, beer at work and movie day and bonding events, and you know, and now that got old and that's changed. And so maybe, you know, this is how you keep employees, is you look, we can keep your housing affordable, or you can go make 20% more at the next place, but you're going to pay 30-40% more for your housing. So it's an interesting concept.
And I mean, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, everyone, I talked to my brother, you know, he's 24, he's a Gen Zer. I mean, he sees right through the ping pong table stuff, right? It just, it doesn't work. You know, he sees a nap room and he's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on, you know, the paradigm has shifted, you know, completely. And you're right. I mean, I feel that giving people a leg up is like the most important component. You know, people just really want a chance. You know, this is why you mentioned the American dream, and it really it creates a lot of different responses, you know, from a variety of people. And it's largely like, you know, someone dangling a carrot out there. Because it's like, what is the opportunity? I put my money on Bitcoin and hopefully like it goes up a bunch, and then, you know, that's the dream. So we need to continue to create and innovate and create opportunities, and housing is just one of those ones. As I said before, it's a fulcrum asset, you know, education, social justice, you know, employment, health, nutrition, sustainability. That is life, you know, so providing an on-ramp to experience that, even if an employee is there for a year, 6 months, if I could save 30% to the market, that puts me in a better position. It gives me a better, you know, view of the company I work for, and it actually gives me a chance, you know. So these are some of the things that, you know, we think that we're positioned well to kind of help solve.
Yeah, it also on the corporate side, you know, you can sell it as, you know, it's not necessarily housing. It's the expense of retaining both of employees is something that everybody, even small businesses, are realizing is a big problem. You know, or you get a kid that's coming out of school, comes to a Portland area with a good degree, but is making $55,000-$60,000 a year. Where are they going to live? You know, that's a problem. And it used to be you come out of school with a college degree, you're making enough income to be able to at least rent an apartment somewhere without having 8 roommates, and you know, so it's a different world.
So now I have another question. So like the new development you showed us, it's 1 bedroom, 1 den. What about families that are relocating? Do you have developments for families as well?
Yeah, so we're definitely engaging on that. You know, we're talking with down here in Southern Oregon, we're talking, and even in Bend, we're talking with some businesses that are looking at more of like townhome style. So less of the singular structure, you know, podium with stick built above that. And they're looking more for, you know, a 4 or 5 acre site that may have 40 or 50 units, but it's oriented in small townhomes and, you know, single family like cottages for sure. So it really, and oh, grandma's here, so thank you. Yeah. So it's a bit a wild ride. So I mean, that really comes back to the corporate ownership, you know, and we do kind of like a debriefing session with them to really figure out what they're trying to solve for, because we want, you know, obviously real estate is, you know, a long lasting asset. And this kind of gets down the line into the network approach where it's, you know, we'll be able to kind of flip and flop and switch their interest between over time, we feel, with our technology and things that we're developing to really address that. But in the near term, we're really getting to, you know, we're really working to understand our corporate partners' need, understand where, you know, we need to be, ideally find projects that are underway that meet that, work deals with those landlords or developers to basically condense that time frame. Or if we must, go out and we handle that building ourselves by coordinating with public staff, planning, zoning departments, working to find other workforce initiatives, grants, funds to bring down that cost even and more so for our corporate partners. So the short of it is, you know, for that market, we felt kind of these efficiency units would be in higher demand, but by no means are we looking to just kind of provide that product, because we see the need of, you know, families leaving, one spouse is there, the other one commuting back, and it's painful, you know.
What year did you start Annum?
Yeah, so the concept was essentially started early 2020, and, you know, midway through 2020. And the truth is, I had a project in LA. I'd spent the prior, so since we bought it in 2017, 2018, entitlements and everything in LA take roughly 24 months. We're negotiating with our architect, our GCs, engineers, saying, hey, we're trying to create this workforce product. They all gave us deals on their pricing. We got the owner to roll in the land. We did all of this work only for February of 2020 to come by and it to absolutely wipe out every single, savings that we created. And we were faced with an issue. We either build to the market and just say, hey, we have to rent these out at, $4,500 a month because we need to cover ourselves, or, the game's over. We hand over the keys. And as we did not want to take that first route, and we started thinking more creatively, and we saw nurses traveling, we saw the pain that it was causing the medical field, and we just started to engage companies down in LA, and it was a real problem. And we said, hey, we think we can solve this. So we were trying to solve housing affordability in other ways, and it's tiring to ask everyone to, be a good person and to, take less than what they're worth. And when the market changes on you, it becomes nearly impossible to hold people to that because they have other jobs where they're getting, 60% more than what you negotiated. So that this was our way to address the problem in a better way.
So a quick question before I need to leave and head over to a 5 o'clock meeting. First of all, thank you. Great information. And it's really exciting to see the next generation of Annum leadership jumping in and out of the screen. That's awesome. What can we as a city do? I noticed that Hillsboro's not on your list yet, but I hope we are soon. And in that case, what can we do, to assist? You mentioned 24 months, in LA, and I get it. LA is just big and you can't compare Hillsboro to LA. But there are things that you could suggest to us as a city that we need to be sensitive to and responsive to that will help you and in turn help the beneficiaries of your projects.
Yeah, no, so great question. There's a couple of things, and I think that could turn into, a discussion just by itself, frankly. I think, right now, one of the big things is finding, interested corporate partners that we can engage with. That's really deciding a lot of our market movement right now. What markets we're looking to be in is really by the corporate interest, right? That's A. B, then it goes really down to the planning and zoning office. They see the permit or deal or construction applications come through and what have you, and knowing what's in the pipeline, what's underway, because once again, we're not trying to put ourselves at odds with developers in the market, but ultimately work with them to say, hey, Airbnb is a great example. People own Airbnbs. Airbnb works within the ecosystem to allow them to leverage their home or their secondary residence. We want to be that same way with developers. Let's say, hey, we're not coming to take your business. We're coming to augment your business, right? So if you have a project going on, most of these developers, they like building stuff. They like pointing at projects and saying, yeah, that was a good one. This is what we did. They hate managing. They hate leasing up. They hate engaging in all the things that we really want to be good at. And getting kind of or building a relationship with them and being able to say, hey, we can buy into your project, reduce your risk, solve your lease up. Or, if you want to sell out, we're willing to do that at the stage now. Tends to be very compelling. This is how we came across Analog. That was a relationship with a developer I had, but I explained the concept and said, this is what we're looking to do. And he was like, great, lease up risk is a pain for us. We would love to, exit this and move on to our next project. right? So those are really the two things from, Annum's perspective, I think are the most helpful. Overall, thinking about the industry at large, speaking with planning and zoning offices, and, this is just kind of shooting from the hip, but I've talked with architects, engineers, and, everyone's dealing with a personnel issue, and I'll try to make it short and sweet. You have people on one side that are motivated to protect the public. You have people on the other side that are motivated to take a risk, right? And there's just areas where those don't match up perfectly. When I was in Bend, they talked about, having, once a quarter a way for, the private market and the public market to engage, and I would even extend that to say, public market, hey, here are our top 20 issues. Private market, here are our top 20 issues. Now, when I go out to buy shoes, it's great that my expectation is that, I play basketball like Michael Jordan, or shoot like Steph Curry. That's not realistic. At the end of the day, I want the shoes to not fall apart and keep me safe, right? And I think going through those lists and focusing on those things like, yeah, I know you want it faster, but here's like the reality, if we have these set of standards, maybe we can align on the things that keep us safe and make sure that those don't fall off. And probably, I guess, a derivative of that is even engaging with local architects on pre-approved plans or, floor plans for project or certain zoning. I always thought that that was a creative idea because architects are always struggling to figure out ways to, get passive income because they're very much keep what you kill, like most of the industry. And they're always looking at these developers with envy saying like, man, I want that passive income too. So I think if the public sector were to even engage with them and say, hey, here's an RFP for 20 architects to draw plans at X fees, and these will become kind of like our pre-approved plans. And now people that come to our website, they can choose it off the shelf and they can buy this plan. And we already know it's good, at least 70% there. And maybe architects, the public sector will own the plans, but maybe there's some kind of a royalty agreement where you get 10%, the private market's going to be happy because they can move quicker, so on, you get it. So once again, not vetted, just an idea.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. And while, we may not be able to do a Michael Jordan or Steph Curry thing, I promise you, we will adore you like Clyde Drexler and Damian Lillard. Okay. And thank you so much for coming. And look forward to seeing you again. To Tony, and thank you. As always, great job.
All right, any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Jerryck, I want to thank you for coming here today and presenting valuable information. I think I learned a lot, especially about what you do, which was completely foreign to me. We even have a real estate person in the room. We have a property management person in the room. So, hopefully they got some valuable information out of this as well. Do you have any last words you want to say before we go ahead and end for the day?
Just, thank you again. I think it's so productive to have these kind of forums to, highlight people, but also, kind of create a think tank in a seamless way. Thank you, Deanna, for inviting me. Very much appreciated. And, I'm not sure if you guys have my contact information, but I'm willing to share that, and feel free to reach out with any questions. And I'd love to engage with you guys further.
If I don't get it all in here now, I have your name and email in the chat now. Do you have a phone number you want included or anything like that as well? I don't think.
Yeah, I can definitely add that. Yep.
Yep, go right ahead. Yep, go right ahead before we close out. And thank you to everyone that showed up. I appreciate it. And make sure you tell people that didn't show up, they missed some knowledge, a lot. And possible solutions to our housing issues out here. I think that's big.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I agree. We're not going to solve the problem by doing the exact same thing over and over. So thanks, Jerryck.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for once again attending the Innovative Work Hard workforce housing solutions with Jerryck Murray of Annum. And we'll see you at our next presentation. Thank you. Have a good night.
You all.
Thank you. Take care.